Rebel Moon Part 2, The Scargiver, is directed by Zack Snyder and is now premiering on Netflix. This is a movie that continues the story of where Part 1, A Child of Fire, left off back in December. And this one picks up right where that one ended, in fact, about a few minutes later, where Admiral Noble, played by Ed Skrein once again, is still alive. And he is on the warpath once again, and he decides to finally defeat the rebels on Velt, as they've taken refuge over there. And because the villagers have not been in a situation like this before, the rebels are training them to fight in the battle, not quite knowing if the battle is going to be victorious or not. The movie is 2 hours and 2 minutes long. Pretty much the entire movie is, the first half is setting up to the big finale, and the last hour is the finale. I'll talk more about that stuff in a bit, but this is one of those strange reviews that I'm going to do, because for me, talking about Rebel Moon Part 1 and Part 2 so far feels like an experience that is only complete to a certain point. If you've been following the news about Rebel Moon, then you know that there's a lot of information out there regarding extended versions of the movie, and very recently it was revealed that there's even alternate takes of scenes available in those extended versions. Whenever you see things like that, going into a movie which you're already then aware is not a complete version of said movie, it makes it a very bizarre experience. And even while watching the movie, even just before that, people I was talking to in the theater were like, yeah, there's an extended version coming later, which is probably going to add some stuff. That's not to say you can't enjoy or, have an opinion on Rebel Moon Part 2 right now, which you can. If for my money's worth, I did like this a bit more than Part 1. I think that some of the character work, especially over here, some of it is a lot more intriguing. There are some things that they add for characters which I wanted to know a lot more about in that first part, which I'm guaranteeing is going to be there much more extensively in those longer versions of the film. For example, a lot of stuff is given to Nemesis, played by Duna Bay, and there's a huge thing around her which I feel like we still have not seen. We get glimpses of what led to this point of her life, but there's so much more that I would like to see explored, and I feel like we're going to see explored. And the same thing applies to Tarak, played by Stas Nair, who I also thought was an interesting character in the first movie, but there's a lot more to his backstory as well that we get glimpses of, and we haven't seen the full thing yet. There are full movies in those storylines, which I feel like is really surprising, watching this version and then remembering, oh yeah, 1 hour longer version coming in the future, which is going to have some of that information. But make no mistake, even with those redacted versions in here, it does lead to some nice scenes, including one around a dinner table where everybody tells their entire life stories and, sort of confesses that not everybody's perfect. And I did like that about it. And I thought everybody did a great job once again. I thought Sofia Boutella was even more of a badass as Cora in this one. I liked Michelle Huzman as Gunner. I think the guy really came into his own in this one. Jimon Hansu as General Titus is really awesome. And I just like seeing Jimon Hansu get even more shine when it comes to any movie. He's a great actor. And whenever the guy gets to really, do his best as that actor, it's always awesome. So give praise to that whenever I can. Ed Skrein as Admiral Noble is once again having a chillingly fun time with it. He's just hamming it up at a couple of points, and good for him. He is playing that villain to a perfect T as he's wanting to. Also, I will say I did like Anthony Hopkins as Jimmy in this. I think he has a little bit more to do over here, and there's a couple of really great scenes with him, particularly one showstopper of a scene that was genuinely really, really cool, and that was a highlight. Apparently the extended versions have a little bit more of him as well, which I wouldn't be surprised by, because there's so much about that character's lore that we're hinted at, and we're given sort of, tidbits about that I would definitely like to see a lot more of in the extended versions. And much like any Zack Snyder movie preceding it, it is once again a visually and technically pretty impressive experience. It looks fantastic. That final hour when the battle kicks in is one big explosive extravaganza. And yes, the special effects are genuinely remarkable. There's a few really show-stopping moments in there that were genuinely quite impressive. And once again, it has a lot of really great stuff when it comes to how it looks and how it sounds. There's a great score once again by Tom Holkenborg, aka Junkie XL, really overpowered even more this time than the first movie. And so in all those respects, the film does do a good job. But then, as you can probably tell, there's so many things that don't feel like they're in there because there is a version of the movie out there that we're yet to see. And so it leads to such a strange critique because to me, my problems are something that feel like they're in the moment but may not be there later on. Now granted, there is no guarantee that when the extended versions come out, all of this is going to get cleared up. Because who knows, I might watch those and say, well, those problems still persist. Maybe. But I also get the feeling that at least in that sense, I'll be talking about the complete thing. And so whenever I end up saying anything about the extended versions of Rebel Moon, which is probably going to be in August, given what the developments seem to be, then in that case, whatever I'll talk about with the, final grades and everything will at least be a complete film. And I feel like right now I haven't really got that, which leads me to an entirely different talking point, which is I really don't love the way they've handled this. And I don't know whose decision this was. I feel like this was more Netflix's decision than Zack Snyder's decision, but cutting this up into PG-13 R-rated versions, which are 1 hour each, cut off, and there's differences and, dialogue exchanges and all that. This is not a feasible system. At the time of doing this review, they've announced that they want to do more movies, and whether or not those happen, we'll see. But having read that news, I really hope that going forward, we don't do this system again. Because I don't feel like this is effective in any way. Think about it for a second, because when it comes to anyone else watching a movie, when it comes to most people watching movies actually, there's always this thing about first impressions. You get one chance to really show people like, hey, we've got something really good here. But it's very rare that people come back a second time if the first time isn't great. I know it took people years to finally say, you know what, let's give that Batman v Superman extended cut a try. Like, maybe it'll be good. I thought it was great when I first saw that, and I saw that as soon as it dropped. But some friends of mine didn't watch it until much later, and then they were like, oh, that was actually a lot better. So that can also happen. But unfortunately, that's not the case for everybody. And what it results in then is sort of a vacuum and a disconnect. And unfortunately, that's not a system that you want, as your legacy. But as this come down to the most Zack Snyder movies, at this point, it's become weirdly normal to expect a better or a more complete version later than what you're getting in time. So I'm really hoping that whenever they do another installment of Rebel Moon, whenever that ends up being, that for part 3 or whatever it comes, that when those movies come out, it's the full thing out the gate. I don't think that, there's any rush for that. Like, you can take your time, build on anything that you need to build on, and then put it out there. Because otherwise, doing this essentially for an algorithmic thing, which is probably just, hey, this version gets clicks, that version gets clicks, we get some traffic either way. I don't feel like this is a very economically feasible thing, especially if you want to keep people to continue watching, or you want to keep the fan base alive, or even keep a fan base in general, because I'm pretty sure the news of all of this has certainly stalled any kind of development when it comes to Rebel Moon fans. I can't think of as much buzz for this one as much as there was for part 1. In fact, part 1 got a theatrical release, a 70mm release. It got an early drop on Netflix. There was a huge thing for it. The homepage changed. None of that over here. The movie's just dropping at 3 a.m. tonight. So I don't know. My overall thoughts on Rebel Moon Part 2, I feel like I've gotten scattered in this video as a result of it. But overall, I did enjoy it a bit more than Part 1. But I would not say that I can give you guys a full, fledged grade yet, because I still feel like I've not seen the full version. So I'm at the same point as I was with the part 1 review, which was come back in a few months for the full review of part 2 and part 1's extended as well, because then I'll actually be able to, discuss the entire thing, and I'll build on the points that have been made in this video and expand upon them in that video. It's like reviewing a TV series without having seen the entire thing. Whenever I've done that on my channel, I don't give the grade, because why would I do that? I haven't seen the entire thing. So I feel like the series could go either way by the end. It could either be really good up until then, or it could be really bad by the end. You never know. And so I feel like I need to see the full thing before giving you guys an informed decision. That's just how I operate. I don't know if that's something that's, okay with everybody, but sorry about that. So yeah, see you in August for the full actual review at this point. Guys, thank you very much for watching, and if you do check out Rebel Moon Part 2, let me know what you guys think of it. I'm very curious to hear your thoughts. As always, if you like this, please do subscribe, and I'll see you guys at the movies.